And we are live, but we're just waiting for a couple of people to show up for our meeting. So we're just going to hold on and wait for a moment.
Okay. Dave Clark says, I can see and hear you, but we can't see him or it's not showing up.
Okay, and there's Kathy has joined us, so that's great. Hi, Kathy.
Hi.
How can Dave be seeing us? Is he watching us on Facebook?
That happened to me one other time, so I had to log out and log back in again.
Okay, so Jeff got to him.
Okay, I just sent him that message. I will just wait.
We'll just wait for a moment, yeah.
He says he is viewing on Zoom.
Does he have the rest of us on his screen?
Yeah, he said he sees us all.
I don't. Does anybody see him? I don't.
I don't.
Yeah.
No.
Ask him to speak.
Dave, can you turn off your mute and speak?
There he is.
There we
He's
go.
coming.
Here you are.
He's just waiting. He's just connecting. Hi, Dave.
There you are. Okay.
Tried a different way to come in. It worked.
All right.
He's not on mine.
Now you might have to scroll because you're on an iPad, Brenton. You may not see all of everyone. Okay, and so before the mayor
There he is.
before the mayor calls to order, I'm just going to remind everybody to mute their microphone unless you've been recognized to speak, so we don't get any background noise.
Unless you have a noisy clock.
Or a noisy counselor. And so we're live on Facebook now, and I turn it over to you, Your Worship.
Thank you very much. So good evening, everybody. I would like to say that our last meeting that we did through Facebook Live had the highest attendance of a meeting that we've ever had. So perhaps, maybe this is what we should be doing it from now on. I really could see a lot of people interested in what's going on. So just housekeeping things, counselors. I'd like for you to have your have muted if you're not speaking. Also, when it comes to questions, I can see your hands, raise your hand, and I will make sure you get to speak. Yes, Councillor.
I can't hear you though. I don't. Can you? Is it screwing up, Rachel? Okay.
I can't hear her either.
I can
Okay.
hear her, it's really echoey and background noise, and it's just a mess. Sounds like
Cracky.
I am.
There, that's a little better though.
Better,
Make sure
yeah.
you sit close enough to the speaker, I guess.
Okay. So I'm going to keep talking. Does it sound better now? Okay, great. We'll proceed. So this is our committee of a whole meeting on Monday, May 4th. I'm going to call this meeting to order, and I'm going to ask for an approval of the agenda, please. So moved, first and seconded.
Second.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Motion passed. Okay, next we have, we need to have an approval of the previous meeting, which was our regular committee of the whole, which happened April 6, 2020. Are there any errors or omissions in those minutes? Okay, if not, I need a motion for approval of those minutes, please. Moved and seconded, all in favor?
Aye.
Okay, motion passed. Now we're going to move on to our new business for this evening, and we're going to be having a presentation tonight. It is on our financial conditioning index and our action plan. Kathy Cox-Brown is with us to do that. We also have Jason Hahn from our municipal advisor. And I would like council just to let Kathy get through the whole action plan, and then we'll have opportunity to ask questions at that time. So I'm also going to, okay. Thanks, Kathy.
Hi, can everyone hear me? Okay, great. What we're going to do, I'm going to go and just kind of share a screen. So let me see if I can do this. Okay.
Down the bottom, Kathy, the green share screen. There you go.
Did you see it? Okay, good. I'm getting better, Rachel. I'm going to be a
awesome.
pro soon in Zoom, right?
It's all good.
That's good. We do have, I'm not sure if you, and maybe before I do this, I'll just go through a brief kind of summary, which is up here. It's a slideshow. No. I'm going to drive you guys nuts. Just kind of the process we went through, and then I'm going to go through it with you. But basically what we did, the FCIs are just to help kind of see where the risk could be, and just illustrates possible or potential vulnerabilities. It's just what it's to do. Just to see if a risk, the possibility of an event occurring, doesn't say it's going to occur, that it just might occur, and that it has an impact. And we usually measure it in terms of impact and likelihood. So this is what we kind of went through in our Excel spreadsheet that I'll go through with you. So the process we kind of looked at was, first we identified the risk that could occur, and then we kind of assessed the likelihood and the impact, and then gave it an overall rating, kind of very standard about this, is if it's the likelihood, for example, if the likelihood is low, but it's a major consequence, then it's rated high. So we kind of followed this kind of chart when we went through all of them, which we'll go through. Then based on when you get the final assessment, you kind of assess what's the appropriate treatment that you would do. And this is what builds the action plan. So is it, there's certain actions you would just avoid doing because the risk is so high, you just wouldn't do this activity. It's just too high. One choice is you might try to reduce the risk, just to drag it down to an acceptable level. Sometimes you may try to share a risk, like for example, for the province, we did P3s because we were trying to share some of the risk, or you transfer it like for insurance, or you just have to accept the risk. And then from there, you can develop kind of strategies and actions. And from that, so based on when we looked at your FCIs, this is the first step and only the first step in helping to identify what are some potential vulnerabilities and risks. And if you
Kathy, can I just stop you just there for a moment? Yep. So I'm just wondering, like, for the people that are viewing, they may not understand, you know, what really this is about and why municipalities do these types of things. So maybe if you could just give a couple sentences on why we do them and what it's about.
About the FCIs?
Yes, please.
Yes. So the FCIs is just like it was an exercise that was done in kind of on a collaborative approach with the department as well with AMA and actually the Nova Scotia Federation to municipalities to come up with a simple way that we could demonstrate kind of risks to fiscal instability and where we could look at some vulnerabilities or even look at some strengths. So what came out was there's 13 indicators is what was developed in that approach. And how we do is all the information comes into the province. We calculate them, though the information is kind of pre-calculated in some of the templates, so you do have a preview. We just go over, assess it, make sure the data is correct, and we validate the numbers. And based on that, we'll give you your FCIs. And the house here that you see is kind of a model of the 13 FCIs. The bottom ones we call the base ones that basically really just tell you, relate to revenue. Some of these you may not have as much control over, but they're the base ones relating to revenue. And again, some risks you may not have control on, but you still have to deal with them. For example, someone breaking in your home, you may not be able to have control over that risk, but you lock your door in case that risk occurred. So it's kind of similar with some of these. So on the base one, we look at, do you have any vulnerability for if a business closed down, or you have a real dependence on a business? What is your movement and your change in your tax rate? Is your tax rate and the revenue base keeping up with the cost of living? So if it's keeping up with the cost of living, it's kind of doesn't show a vulnerability at that time. And then we look at your residual tax effort. That's kind of the burden on residents. So the higher that is, the less likely you can increase that. It limits your flexibility. So that's when you see the bottom of yours, you can see that your 3-year change in tax rate is keeping up with the cost of living. Actually, it's exceeding because it's 5.2% is the change in cost of living. Your residual tax effort is below that 4% range. So again, that gives you some flexibility if you wanted to increase your tax rate, but you do have a high dependence on a single business. So the structure part of it and the middle thing is when we look at things that you more have control over. And that, so we look at type of things, for example, how is your ability to collect taxes? So is that coming in smoothly? Because again, revenue is great, but if you don't have cash and collecting revenue, then you will start having a liquidity issue. So we want to look about your uncollectible tax. And again, yours is green, it shows great strength and it's very low. So that means you're collecting most of your revenues coming in. Then another one we would look at, what are you like for balancing your budget compared to your actual? So are they very close when you're doing that calculation and that? So it gives us an indication of expenditure management, how well you're doing that. So we look on how accurate your budget is to your actuals. And we do it within a 5% range, plus or negative, because no one is ever going to be at a 0 range. And again, for the last 5 years, you have been within the range showing great in the area as well. Then we kind of look at your operating reserves. So there's a certain amount of money that you want to set aside in case there's something unexpected happen. So we have a suggested amount that we would say should go in the reserves. As you can see in the red, you are below in that and what we would consider what would be recognized as a safe zone. So you're about 62% is what you have there of your operating revenue is what you, your operating expenditures. So then we look also at your debt service ratio. That is not a debt affordability, it's just a percentage of your revenue that's going towards debt payments and interest, but it is an indicator of how much more debt you can take. Because again, the higher that comes, the less money you have to spend on services. So 15% is where you hit the red, we call high risk, and you're at 15.4%. Another thing we look to also is your short-term debt. What are you looking like in your short-term rent? And there is some regulations that say you have to be in a certain range. So you are in the low range at 7.8%. Then we also look at how old are your assets? Because then we're looking at vulnerability. We're looking at, and the best way we can look at and understand how long the potential of your assets to exist is through the undepreciated asset, because that gives an estimate of their estimated life and what's left in them. So you have 48.1% of their life is left. So to us, that's a moderate risk area. It's really close. Is around 50% would bring you in green. So you're still close to that green zone in that. But those are the kind of structural ones that we also have huge impact on the roof. And the roof are the ones we call our key performance indicators. So what we would want to see with a municipality is that they're independent, then they are able to meet their current and future needs in an independent and balanced manner. So we look at independent, we look at what's your reliance on government transfers. So again, you're low in that area. Then we looked at, are you able to meet your current needs? So we usually use a pretty standard one, liquidity. Your 1.2, 1.5 is when we go into the green. Under 1 is when we are concerned, and that's when it goes into the red. We look at the number of deficits too, because that's kind of indicator when we say, can you do it in a balanced manner? So we look at how many deficits you've had in the last 5 years. You've only had one in the last 5 years. The reason why it's red is because it's most current. If you have none coming up in the next year, it will go to a moderate because the deficit would have been longer length. We just use that because current deficits could be an indicator of future deficits. But looking at your expenditure management, the 5.5 looks like you have a really good handle on trying to balance that. And we know that that year was a particular interesting year for you. Some unexpected things happened. And combined reserves, when we look at your operating reserve and your capital reserve and looked again to see, are you vulnerable for any unexpected, and do you have money set aside for the assets for future capital project opportunities or future assets? And again, the combined reserves at 14.9%. We usually look at 40% is where we go for a green. So that's red. So that's kind of what we use these for. And then it kind of goes, okay, we look at your house and then we see you have some, what we call risk or vulnerabilities. So the ones, like we said, we highlighted, you have a high reliance on single business and institution. That's just a vulnerability you have that they could possibly leave. You have the high debt service ratio. So again, a lot of the revenue is going to debt and financing. So that kind of limits your flexibility there and could give a risk that if you needed to use debt for capital, it is now kind of very limited what you have left. Lower liquidity, again, that's just an indication of would you possibly have some issues in paying your future bills, but you're moderate range on that. And the low reserves just says, speaks to vulnerability for future assets or future unexpected. And of course, aging assets is another risk we identify. But again, it's close to the green in that 50%. But that's kind of how we start with that. Does that help?
No, that very much helps. And I think it's important to know as well that, oops, sorry. Can you hear me?
Yep.
Okay. I just think it's important for the public to know as well is that each municipality does this every year, if I'm correct.
Yes.
And, it gives us a very good idea of what we have and how much money in which we can do it with. And we always have to keep this in the back of our mind. So I just wanted to share that.
Yeah. And since it's calculated the same way, so it's easy to compare with other municipalities as well. We can say that there is some uniqueness that we do find by categories, town compared to a rural or regional. We do see some differences when we look at them at that level, and particularly around reserves and that issue, and that we do see some uniqueness in towns and that. And some, like for example, a regional tax effort, you're very unique in that area. Over 50% of our town are in a moderate to a risk area in that area. And it's just a common thing we're seeing in towns. So what happens too when we do these overall, when we look at all 13, we come up with an overall assessment where we put the organization in a low risk, a high risk, or a moderate, or a moderate risk based on the base of number of indicators you have in a yellow and red. So for yours, based on the number, we would consider you a high risk for fiscal instability, but that's just risk 2. And again, as we define risk, it's just a potential event could occur. And we have about 9 municipalities in that same situation that would be high risk. One is a rural and the rest are towns. I can tell you the situation for towns is most towns are moderate risk area. We only have 6 that are considered low risk. In comparison, rurals, we only have 1 that's in a high risk, the rest are all low. In regionals, we have 1 that's moderate, the rest are all low. So the towns do have some unique challenges which are being reflected in their FCIs and that. But this is just the beginning when we start looking at this, and I'll move on. And so what we would do, and I'll go through the Excel sheet, but what we would do is start doing a risk kind of assessment. And I'll bring up that other one. If I can. I know, I have to end it. So basically what we do then is we look at what your area of, and if you're considered a high risk municipality, we ask for an action plan. So basically is with anyone that we consider high risk is to look, okay, we notice you have some potential risk, like every risk, what is your feeling on it? And what we would do is list, here's the risk, like we spoke of. And then the next steps is what we would ask the municipality to do, okay, it's similar to any risk assessment. We'd go here, we would look at, okay, what's the likelihood? Because you could have this risk that we identified and it's very unlikely it would happen or likely. So this is kind of the sheet we went through. For example, what's the reliance on a single business? What's the likelihood of Oxford leaving? And so that's when we go through this area, is almost certain, is it likely, is it possible, or is it unlikely? So we have put it down as unlikely, if you're in agreement with that as well. Okay. And the next thing we go again, we would look at your deficits in the last 5 years. Because of your strong budget accuracy, you've only had it once in the last 5 years and your history has been really well with deficits. We think it's unlikely that you incur another deficit that will make you unable to meet your service needs. So we put that as unlikely. Then we look at liquidity. So you have 1.2. Does that mean you'll have limited cash to meet your obligations and would not provide? Again, it's been defined the likelihood of that event occurring is unlikely. Then we looked at operating reserves. So will you need the reserves to help you create a deficit, or are you going to need for unexpected thing? For this, we put likely, just because of the circumstances that are happening now. That there might be likely that you might need your reserve more than possible. Could be possible as well, but we had put it likely just because of the circumstances that are occurring now. Then we went your debt service. Will you have reached your credit limit potential? It's been rated as almost certain because 15% is kind of where the credit limit is. So you have met it now. So it's been defined that it's almost certain that you will. Then the next part, we kind of look down at appreciation. Are your assets, they're at 48.1%. It's moderate risk. 50% is what we would call in the low risk. So will you have assets that will make it difficult for you to reduce services? It's unlikely at this point that you will. So And then at the bottom is unreserved. Again, it's the same thing, is likely just because of the circumstances. And then after each one, we kind of look at, okay, what would be the impact though if this event had occurred? So if Oxford walked away, we kind of put it down at this level. You can put major or moderate, but because of their quite a substantial amount of their income, if they walked away, what would be the impact? Then for deficit, what would be the impact to the organization if you incurred another deficit? It was just a moderate. It wouldn't be major, it'd be moderate. It is a minor because of the reserves. If you had more reserves, you could probably put that as minor, but we said it would be moderate to be, would be the impact to you providing. Again, because of other circumstances, we thought it was be minor with the cash because of the line of credit and other issues, the impact would be minor. And again, the same thing with moderate. If something occurred, you need to reserves, you may create a budget deficit, what would be the impact to your business? It would have a moderate impact. And again, we kind of did similar to each one of these. Is there any questions on that?
So just for clarification for everyone, Kathy and I spent the time going through this together. So it wasn't just the province that filled this out. It was in consultation. It was in consultation with me, with knowledge of the background and the things that were going on. And so because we've got 5 red indicators, we are required by the province to do an action plan. And so this is the premise for it, just so everyone's clear.
So based on these ratings, unlikely we went to the rating matrix would tell you what it overall assessment would be. So then when we went down to here, then this, it comes high. The reliance on single is still a high risk. The defined the last 5 years becomes more of a tolerable risk. So it kind of tells you, and liquidity now is comes a low risk. And again, the same thing, just based on this rating scale, if it's likely to occur, and for example, likely, but it's a moderate impact, it's high. So those were kind of what we were using for that. So that kind of defines it based on these 2 assessments and that. And then, so we came up with this. So kind of lets you know too, what is kind of more of a priority to look at or what you could do, because you have 2, liquidity now is more of a low risk, as well as your undepreciated assets, which not surprising because basically we considered them, had considered the moderate risk anyway. So it seemed to work out that makes sense. And then based on, okay, now you know it's a higher risk or tolerant, it was choices, and that's what I kind of discussed with Rachel, things you could do. What treatment should you use? You can't avoid any of these, so that's kind of not an option. You have to have business, you can't avoid this. But you kind of have a thing, could you reduce it or do you want to accept it? At certain levels at high, you don't want to say you want to accept it, so it kind of brings down to 2, reduce or share. And that, and so it was come down, it was, so it should be reduced, try to reduce that risk. Same thing with deficits, maybe we should try to reduce that risk. And again, with this one, this could have been accepted because it's a low risk, but it was, the choice was to try to reduce it and that. What's interesting, a lot of these are very much connected anyway, when you look at what would be related to each other. So again, so what could you do to reduce the risk of being reliant on a business? And that's when we're with Rachel talking about what could possibly do to do that. And again, you can't do anything. The business is the business, but what you could do is risk the impact if they did leave on your organization. So that would be by having a reserve to get you through certain months while you try to recover from that, or lessen your debt so you're not being, so you have that flexibility if they left. And also to start looking at some other commercial growth opportunities, but basically mainly how to reduce that impact on your organization. And basically the main thing was seemed to be build up reserves. And again, the deficit, it was like what's the best way to reduce the likelihood is, again, it's the continuing monitoring of the expenditures. That budget accuracy is a key thing for it. And again, if you do have an unexpected event, if you have reserves that you can bring over, that means you don't have a deficit. That can help you with the deficit. So the two things to help reduce that was to monitor the expenditures, which your other indicators say you do very well, and then also, again, build out reserves similar to the one above. And again, liquidity, it's similar from what we could see again on that one. I can probably move it over. Again, it was also to increase timeliness of reporting too, so you're just aware more of some information, and we had that up here as well. Again, when we look at this one, again, it's kind of the same thing for operating reserve, is try to build the reserves so that you have, and there's some things that you can do, transfer some of your surplus over. You already have, we would have suggested, do you have a policy? You already have that. So it's just maintaining that reserve policy requirements and try to do things to start putting money aside, knowing that you have to build that reserve up again for the unexpected. And then for this one again, which is kind of your debt service, again, at the 15.0 is kind of what has resulted, or what are you using the debt? It was defined, it's more capital projects. So maybe have a strategic capital investment plan that you can incorporate how you're funding your future projects through revenues, for reserve, as well as for debt. Look to how the debt that's coming up, how you're going to retire it. Sometimes you can also look at what lengths that you're doing your debentures at. Can you extend that too as well? The amount of years that you have them at, from 20 to 25 or that. So there's things like that just to look at that will help you, so that you would have the ability, if you need to access that debt, but at the same time trying to increase it right now. And then again, the only thing that we would suggest, and it's very similar to the one above, if you're looking at undepreciated assets and vulnerability, and we recommend this for all, is you look at having a strategic capital investment plan, which ones, because that ratio just looks at all your assets. You always want to kind of drill down a little bit what particular assets might be hidden that might be more vulnerable to it. So you want to drill down a little bit more. So having a strategic capital investment plan will help you find that, okay, these are the assets that are strategically, that we're concerned about. And these are kind of have more of a priority than some other ones in that. So having an investment plan, knowing which ones that you need to replace when, or which ones you need to just increase maintenance to increase the life on, will help you with that as well. And then with about having that plan, again, having that all connected, when you're building your reserves and you're looking at kind of where your debt is going and what revenues you have to deal with that as well. And again, this just combined reserves, so it's relating again to the operating capital. So that was, it came to it, was going through this. And it's just a very quick process to go through the likelihood, come up with some high-level plans, and from that we just build that action plan, which I think I have. I'm not sure if I have.
So the action plan, Kathy, I actually distributed to council in their agenda package, so they should have it in front of them. Okay,
cool. So you'll see that some of that information I showed you is in appendices to the action plan, and then you just have, so what you would have seen in some of the, if you just go here, that was just highlighting the risk of that summary page of what they are in the appendix, what gets highlighted, and that's what got prompted up from the FCIs, and that's your most current FCIs. Again, that was from the Excel sheet, just seeing where's the trend, just letting you know if any are more consistent vulnerability or it's new or potentially new one. And this is just a summary sheet of just what I went through, what the likelihood and that was worked at that you would have also available in the rating. So I have that all included in, Rachel has that all included in the action plan. And then you come up with the goals. Again, basically the same thing. It's just trying to build the reserves, maintaining and monitoring the expenditures closely, timeliness of reporting and that. So that's how the plan ended up. Is there anything else, Rachel, you want me to go over?
No, I think it was, I've got this document that you're going through, so I have that available to send to council if they want to go through it in more detail, for sure.
Okay.
Lots of information here, and don't know if anybody has some questions around it. I just want to make a point that the FCI is a required process, and the province requires it of all municipalities. And much of the information is gained through our financial statements and our reporting processes. So it's all there, and everybody is rated, as Kathy said, on the same basis and the same foundation. It's one tool that we use in a big toolbox of how we rate our financial stability or our viability or our future outlook. And so once we hit 5 red indicators, we need to do this type of action plan, and it starts to raise concerns in some ways to say, okay, things are going in a different way than what everybody would like them to be. So the province requires a little bit more digging into finding the solutions on how to put them more towards the yellow and the green. And so I want to thank Kathy for working with me, helping me get through this and developing the plan. And it certainly helped get the cash flow of our grants flowing, and so that's much appreciated as well. But I guess open it up if council wanted to have any questions, and I'll let Mayor Stewart go through that.
Okay.
Perhaps Kathy, if you want to unshare your screen.
Yeah, I'm going to try to do that. Maybe up here.
Find that green share screen button.
Where's the green share button? Stop share. Oh,
Stop sharing. Yeah,
got it. Yeah.
There we
Hey,
go.
thank you. I'm getting better.
Learning process.
Learning process. In the process, Rachel's teaching me a lot about Zoom.
Just trade-off.
Yeah.
That was great, Kathy. Thanks so much. I think that, you know, not only to council, but it gives everybody a good indication of, you know, where we are. And I also think as we're in the midst of our budget process, this, you know, it's very good to have this at this time. So, you know, we know what we can spend or what we need to spend or what we need to hold back on. So I appreciate that. Okay, council, if we have any questions, just raise your hand. Some councillors have been through this many times, some not, but okay, I don't see any questions out there. I want to thank you very much for working together with Rachel on that, and we appreciate it.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Mayor Stewart, I wondered if, I didn't know if Jason had any comments or any input from Department of Municipal Affairs.
Okay.
You want to say anything about that?
Nothing really to add from what Kathy presented, except to say that it was a really easy to follow presentation for me. And I hope council felt the same way.
Yeah, I think so. Okay, so you're both invited to stay with us for the rest of the meeting if you would like. If you'd like to zoom out, you can zoom out.
Okay.
But anyway, we are going to continue the rest of our meeting.
All right. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Kathy.
Bye. Bye.
Bye. Jason, you're going to stick around, aren't you?
Oh yeah, I'm gonna stick around for the long haul if that's okay.
Sure.
For sure.
Okay, so under 4.2, we have going to have a bit of a discussion on a food donation. The Mayor Director brought this forward, and actually, Deputy Mayor, I'm going to just speak on it.
Thank you, Your Worship. Just wondering, in this difficult time, a lot of people are having trouble making ends meet and wondering what we as a council could do to help the community. I'm sure there's a lot of people that are finding it difficult. So had a discussion with a few people and was wondering about the possibility of council supporting a donation to the Oxford Food Bank for those that might need the help. I was thinking in the amount of $500, and that's open to discussion from council, but it's a small thing that we can do to help our community, especially for those in need.
I'm not getting used to this. Okay, I'm going to just open it up for discussion now. Okay, Councillor Colburn. Oh, you're still muted. Up in here. Yeah. You're still muted. Okay. Okay, Brenton, we can hear you.
Oh, can you hear me now?
Yes.
Oh, I say I totally agree with Councillor Draper. I think that's a good idea.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Rachel, I'm just going to ask, have you heard anything from Feed Nova Scotia, or have you, anybody really have any hearing anything about how our food banks are doing?
So I did have a discussion with Ruthie before she left, and she had been in touch with the food bank because she was hearing a few things in the community, and then she reached out to one of the organizers, and they were being funded or supplied, I guess is a better word, supplied through Feed Nova Scotia relatively well at that point, and that was probably a couple of weeks ago. I haven't heard anything different. There was thought that there was a food shortage and people couldn't access it. But in fact, I think it was just a one-time, oh my gosh, our freezer, our fridge was overflowing. We were thinking about finding contacts in the community that would have allowed to do some more storage, perhaps at the Parkview or something like that. But in the end, it didn't seem that it was needed and that they had a good supply from Feed Nova Scotia, but that's all I know.
Okay. That was a number of weeks ago. I haven't personally heard anything, but I'm sure that if council is in agreement, we could do this as a motion, and if they don't need to use it even right now, they could have it for the future. So is there any other questions on it before I make the motion? Okay. I would like to move that we donate $500 to our local food bank during this time of COVID-19. All those in favor signify by raising your hand. Contrary minded? Motion passed. Okay. Thank you very much, Councillor. Our next issue under new business will be 4.3 Fire Department report and fleet repairs. And this is a bit of an update. And I'm going to turn it over to Rachel. We do have the report there, but I think she may be adding a little.
So we certainly do have the report. We weren't able to have the March report at the March council meeting, so I wanted to bring it forward as soon as we could. So this is the first meeting. So the top part of the first page of the report just gives the monthly numbers for the calls. notes that their fundraising activities will be significantly impacted due to the COVID-19 issues that we're experiencing. And so I do know that we discussed the fleet repairs for truck 5 previously, and we agreed at that time as a council that we wouldn't put the money into fixing an older truck and not knowing what it would cost to get the safety inspection done on it. Since that time, truck 4 has been experiencing transmission problems. So those are our 2 tankers, both of them. So the chief and I met. He had some costing done for our discussion, and it's transmission issues. And as you can see in the report, Wajax is the professionals that deal with the type of transmission in truck 4, and they are prioritizing first response work, and they can get it done very quickly. We had 2 estimates done, one at just kind of trying to fix the issue. There was a lot of coolant in the transmission and it had been there for some time. And that was at about $7,500. The other option was getting a refurb transmission put in there. And that was at $15,000, and it would come with a 2-year warranty. And so in discussion, it just seemed much more reasonable, and the repair shop highly recommended that we go with the newer transmission, simply because there was no warranty on the work for the $7,500. We didn't know how long that would last. It might last a month, it might last a year, it might not last very long at all. And so I did authorize the chief to have that done. We've had the truck towed into Dartmouth to have it done, and they expect it'll be done, I think, within a week or so, potentially 2. And so then we had a further discussion around truck 5, and based on the fact that we've had our debt affordability model presented to us. We've just gone through the financial condition index. We see that our debt ratio and our debt levels are at maximum of typically what the province will allow for. So we're not in a place right now as the town who can go out and borrow money for a $75,000 to $125,000 replacement truck. And that's a good used truck that would last us for another 15, 20 years. We simply don't have that right now. So it seems to me, and with the chief, we discussed it, it seems more reasonable to take $8,000 to $10,000 to put into truck 5. That would give us the safety inspection, it would give us the brakes, and get the 2 tankers back on the road. It would give us the capacity to operate for the next year or 2 while we retire debt, while we get our reserves in place and we do the work that we need to be able to fund a replacement truck for truck 5. So that's where that is at this point. Looking for just indication from council if that is agreeable, then we can make that go forward for truck 5 as well. But if you have any questions or comments, I'm glad to answer them for you.
Anybody that wants to ask a question, raise your hand. I'm going to ask, okay, Deputy Mayor, I'll get right to you. Can you tell us, Rachel, do we have the last truck completely paid off?
I believe that I don't believe we do. I think there's something on our debt that shows another year or 2 of that.
Okay, so maybe it would be good to know like how close we are to actually paying the last one off before we purchase another one. So
I think we looked at that last month. And the department said that they had this year and next year to finish paying back. Maybe Linda has better recollection of that, but I'd have to look at it. But I know that our debt schedule with MFC has that on it. I just don't have it at the tip of my fingers right now.
Okay, sorry about that. I thought you might just know right off the bat. Okay, Deputy Mayor Draper.
Just a quick question. Which truck was it they were looking at possibly retiring and turning into a rescue vehicle?
That was truck 5.
Okay. Thank you.
Councillor Colburn, do you have a question?
No, you hear me?
Oh, we can hear you. You might want to mute. We can hear
Oh.
your clock.
Okay. Well, I never know when I'm.
Okay. All right. Any other questions? Okay, if not, thank you very much to our fire chief and to you, Rachel, for that report. It brings us up to date on what's happening with the trucks.
So can I ask, because we don't have an approved budget yet, I know that at this point, doing both trucks is going to run us probably about $25,000 for maintenance to get those up and running. Is that something that council is comfortable with to give me instruction to go ahead with at this point, and we'll work that into the budget? I know that the truck 5 is older and it's long outlasted its life,
Yeah.
but at this point we don't have much of a choice to get anything newer. So I think it's our best interest to put $8,000 to $10,000 into it and get it back on the road into service.
Yeah. Okay.
Nod
All right.
of the head, everybody okay?
Everybody good with that? Nod your head. Good, good. Okay, looks good.
Thank you very much.
Okay, excuse me. Next thing up we have under 4.4 is the Lyme Disease Awareness Month. This is a proclamation. If any of you have been out in the woods lately, you'll know exactly why this is Lyme Prevention Month. We do have a proclamation to read. I will read it at this point, and I will sign it, and it will become Lyme Disease Awareness Month. Whereas Lyme disease is a serious illness caused by a bite of a black-legged tick infected with bacterium Borrelia 4, and whereas black-legged tick carrying a variety of diseases around us can now be found in all parts of Nova Scotia, and whereas awareness, education, and practicing preventive measures such as daily tick tests and proper tick removal can help reduce your chances of contracting tick-borne diseases. Therefore, may it be resolved that I, Mayor Trish Stewart, on behalf of the town of Oxford, do hereby proclaim May 2020 as Lyme Disease Awareness Month. Signed, Mayor Stewart.
Can I say something? Ask something?
Certainly may.
Is anybody having trouble hearing the mayor besides me? I can't make out a word that you're saying, Your Worship.
It's still coming in bad?
It's all muffled, and yeah, I only understood about half a dozen words of that whole thing.
Okay.
Kind of a hit and miss with you.
Okay, sorry, my computer is really old, so, but we can't afford a new one, so. Can you hear me? Is it?
It's working perfect right there.
Okay, so you hear me better if I get closer?
Yes, definitely.
Okay. Okay, I'll do my best. Okay, now under 4.5, notice of policy and discussion on COVID-19 property tax financing plan policy. So it's important to say that both Rachel and I have been working with SM and with our counterparts in both the Cumberland and the town of Amherst, just trying to come up with some type of financing plan policy. And I think, Rachel, I'll just let you give a brief discussion on what we kind of came up with.
Sure. So this is resulting from the Premier's announcement of a municipal loan program. And so to do so, we need to put a policy in place. As the report outlines, municipalities can't borrow money for operating or cash flow shortages. They can only borrow money for long-term financing for capital investment. If the Premier were to, or the Minister were to give a directive under the state of emergency that would defer tax payments, it would only be valid through the state of emergency. And once the state of emergency was lifted, that tax deferral would cease. And so then everybody would be required to pay the outstanding amounts that were due. So that way doesn't really work. So the province is giving us the ability to do this loan program. And so everyone, all the municipal units were asked to provide the impact of what they thought taxation payment shortfall may be this year based on some assumptions. And I think 46 of the 49 municipal units fed into that information request. And they came up with about a $380 million potential impact. And so for the town, we're looking at anywhere between $600,000 and $700,000 that could potentially be impacted by those folks and businesses that would have difficulty making their property tax payments in a timely manner. So the best opportunity is for us to put a policy in place that has criteria that outlines who is eligible to fall within not necessarily a deferred taxation plan, but it allows payment of the current year taxes over a 2-year period. So we take about 6 months. It would be a nominal fee, say $25 a month. So the first 6 months, the property owner who would be qualified would pay $25. And then after that 6 months, the rest of this year's current taxes would be amortized over the next 24 months. So 24 equal payments would cover that off. Now, next year's taxes would come due, normal time, normal payment. It's only for this 1 year as it stands right now. If we open it up too broadly, it could potentially become oversubscribed. We've only indicated between $600,000 and $700,000. If we open it up too broadly, more people would be eligible, and we're not able to borrow any more money than that $600,000 or $700,000 that we've indicated. So if it became $1 million, then we wouldn't be able to support all of those people who are eligible under the program. The programs themselves, they're not meant to be a fix-all for everyone. It is meant to provide good support to the people who are most affected by COVID-19. There would have to be proof of it for residential property owners, which would be receipt of the CERB benefits from the federal government. Could be a record of employment showing shortage of work due to COVID-19. For commercial properties, it would be a level of assessment. That's what their business is based on. And so for us, we need to look through our assessment role and kind of pull out what we think is going to encompass most of the businesses who we feel would be hardest hit. Obviously, hospitality, tourism, those types of businesses are going to be the hardest hit. And that's what we'll be looking at covering off. We just discussed a draft policy today, so we're going to do the work and put the numbers into it, and we'll have the draft policy for council to consider. And this is just mostly bringing awareness, making sure that people understand why we're putting a policy in. It's we have to give a 7-day notice to council before any new policy or change in policy. It doesn't have to be public, but I always like to make it as public as we can because it brings it into awareness and gives us opportunity in advance of it to get thinking about it and raise any questions and be able to respond to that. And hopefully, as a result, we come up with a better policy. The 3 orders of municipal government in the county are committed to presenting a consistent policy as best that they can. We had that discussion today. I think it is in the benefit of all of our residents in the region because there's some people who live in the county and town, you know, they have properties in both. Neighbors talk, people talk. And so we can do the most amount of good, have the most powerful policy and cover the most number of people if all 49 municipalities have as consistent and close a policy put in place, and then it's consistent across the board. So that was kind of the intent behind developing this. And I think that's probably all that I would have.
I guess the way that I kind of see it is that if taxpayers are having a hard time trying to pay us, and we have a lot of, let's say we had a lot of them, we still need our cash flow. So by doing this, we would be borrowing money really to help our taxpayers, but still keep our cash flow going. So that's how I kind of understand it. Okay. Is there questions, please? Okay, that's great. Everybody's been notified of that, so wonderful. Now we're going to.
Can I just ask if Jason had any comments from the provincial side of things?
Sure. Just to say that once council has decided on the route for policy and decided on an amount, we have a resolution template that's similar to the temporary borrowing resolution, which is pretty close to being ready to go. And then there's some due diligence required on the part of the department. So still early days, we haven't had a chance. We haven't had anybody out of the gate quite yet to nail down exactly how long it would take, but early estimates would be 2.5 week turnaround before ministerial approval, which you need in order to get the agreement from the Municipal Finance Corporation. So just casting out ahead, please do give yourself plenty of time between passing a specific resolution and engaging with the Finance Corporation.
Okay.
And the Finance Corporation has said once everything's signed off by the province, then they can turn around the cash within about 24 hours. So that was their intent. You know, they were having a board meeting, I think, last week to get that put in place. And so everybody's committed to moving things as quickly as possible to get it in place. So what as I put in the report as well, based on that, our taxes are due June 1st. And so at the May council meeting, I'd be making a recommendation to council that a motion be put in place that would waive interest fees for the month of June on this year's taxes, in order to give us enough time for people to sign up for the program to determine if they're eligible. And then we're not going to change the due date, but we would encourage people who can pay their taxes to pay them on time. And those who can't, it gives them the time to get enrolled into the program, not face a penalty, and then start that payment program. So we'll have more details on that at the May Council.
Okay. Does it sound good? Okay, very good. Next, we have the appointment of a solid waste bylaw enforcement. So I had some discussion with Rachel today regarding this. Essentially, this has kind of always been in place, but we hadn't put it into a motion. So it's very important that we do so. Sure, everybody's had the opportunity to read it over. This gives this would give the town's bylaw officer in which to go to properties to find if there's any issues as far as garbage removal, anything that may be dangerous, a fire hazard, or things like that. Yeah, do you have anything else to add to that, Rachel?
There's no additional cost.
There, yes, always important. There's no additional cost. It's actually something that that we get with it.
They do it for Amherst as well.
Yeah, they do it for Amherst, but we do need to make this into a motion. Okay,
And
question?
the motion would be, oh, sorry, do you want to do questions first?
I just wondered if there was any questions first. Okay, I have the motion here. I can read it. Okay. The motion would be to recommend, excuse me, to council to appoint CJSMA employees Brenda Lynn Ryu and Michelle Lynn Canfield as solid waste bylaw enforcement officers for the town of Oxford in conjunction with the town of Oxford's Chapter 22 solid waste bylaw. Okay, any other questions? Question? Are you a mover? Okay, mover, seconder, please. Moved and seconded. All in favor, raise your hands. Contrary minded, motion passed. Okay, so this does end our Facebook Live portion of our council meeting. I'm going to ask councilors to stay behind. We do have some personnel issues that we need to discuss, but I do need a motion for adjournment for this portion of our meeting. Moved and seconded. Seconded. All in favor, raise your hands. Contrary minded. Okay, very good. So stay on the line and we're going to stop our live streaming. Hi, Wendy.
Hi.